Welcome back to another episode of the Obstacle Dominator podcast. And in today's episode, what we're going to be discussing is sleep. And this is a big one for all of us. And if it's overlooked, it's going to have a significant impact on just about every other aspect of life. So sleep is a priority, and you should be sleeping like your life depends on it. Because if you don't, then it's going to disrupt absolutely everything. So, what do I know about sleep? Well, over the past few years, I've been very invested in my own personal development around sleep. And not only have I done that, I've worked with many, many other people that have struggled with their sleep day to day. So, really, what I'm going to talk about is all of my experiences personally in being a sleep ninja across the entirety of my life, but also what I've learned and gained through my studies, my research, and also working with tons of people, and some of which have actually struggled to sleep for the most part of their life. Some people being in their 30s and 40s, and even like older than that, that have struggled across their life with sleep issues for various different reasons, mentally, physically, anxiety, whatever that may be, and what can be done about it. Okay, and really it comes down to simplicity. And everything we stand here for here at Primal Fitness is by taking like the human approach, the ancestral approach, like what has worked for us as human beings forever up until this point. Okay, and the modern world can actually throw in some curveballs and actually affect the way that we sleep. And whether that's distractions through technology, whether that's anxiety and things that are going on in our life, stress, there's a whole host of things. And this is clearly specific to you. But what I'm going to give you here is a lot of information in a short amount of time, which we can expand on other podcasts, other training, or even if you want to reach out and have a conversation with me or one of the team members directly, how we can help you with this in any way, shape, or form. And we've literally helped tens and tens of people over the past couple of years, specifically with sleep. And like I said, like if this is out of whack, it's going to affect absolutely everything else in life. And actually, when people come in and start working with us, this is one of the fundamental areas that we actually focus on. So let's talk about sleep. We're going to talk about what sleep actually is, yeah, how it affects us if we're not getting an optimal amount of it. Also, we're going to talk about what is an optimal amount of sleep. What should we be getting in terms of like the duration? Also talking a little bit about sleep cycles. Something else we'll talk about is like our biology and like what we're predisposed to in terms of like our chronotype. And there's a number of different chronotypes that we'll talk about, and you'll fall into one of these. And then also we'll look at like what's affecting your sleep and sleep disturbances, and how that's having an impact on our life and what we can actually do about it. So this will be quite short and condensed, although I will go into quite a lot of information. Clearly, this will draw out a lot of questions for you, and I want you to ask those questions. Okay, so interact on this podcast. Okay, if you're looking at this through Spotify, if you're over on YouTube, leave comments so I can get back to them. Equally, if you want more direct support or questions, then reach out and ask me over Instagram or Facebook or wherever you see this link here. Okay, so everything comes from this. And as backwards and as crazy as this seems, like we are firm believers that the day begins with the evening or your night routine and your sleep. Because if it doesn't start there and we don't set conditions for good quality sleep, well, we're going to get a lousy night's sleep, which is going to affect our mental and physical energy in the morning. It's going to have an effect on our appetite, our levels of stress, our ability to deal with stress, our productivity in work, our relationships, our output within our movement and training. So if we get this right, if we get our evening right and our routines right around our evening routine and our sleep routine, then we're really starting to set ourselves up for success. I'll give you a few pointers on that, and we'll have a look at environment as well as that. So, what is sleep and why is it important? Now, sleep is not fully understood. I mean, there's lots and lots of research going on in the world now, and they don't fully understand why we do sleep. why we dream, and like really what it does for us. But what we do know is it happens at periodic states, i.e. the sleep and wake cycles, and it's natural to do it. There isn't any species, any animal on Earth that doesn't sleep. Okay, but different animals sleep in different ways. But really, how humans sleep is in a biphasic pattern. So basically, it means that we're meant to sleep in the night and day, but also at two different points in the day as well. And that's more natural to us. However, in more like recent times, modern human being, that isn't so natural. I mean, if you look at places around the world that have siestas, okay, where it's typically warmer in the middle of the day, people will take time off to go for a nap, to take some rest. Yeah, everyone's experienced the afternoon slump, okay, when core temperature raises to its highest. There's certain things that we can do about it, but that's biologically how we're wired. So they suggest, the scientists. And this will lead nicely onto the chronotypes as well that I'll speak about. And really the three of them and how they intertwine with one another. Yet again, primal human, hunter-gatherer, if we was all to be asleep at the same time, we would definitely expose ourselves to predator danger. So by having these chronotypes, actually what that would do is stagger where we sleep or who sleeps at what time. And another factor into the chronotypes is also what stage of life you're at. Now, if we look at infants, newborns, can be quite irregular sleep. Some will sleep through, some will not, some will be up early, some will not. But for the most part, children in early life will go to bed earlier and they will rise earlier. As we know, it could be anywhere from 4 a.m. to 6, okay? Or they may wake up various times during the night. That's the way their biology is. Then moving into teenage life, so later childhood and being a teenager through to like the early 20s, what happens is a shift. Typically, these people will go to bed later. It could even be from 11 p.m. all the way through till 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And then what would typically happen if like the lifestyle would allow for it, and at weekends or times where there isn't commitments on, these people, these teenagers would get up later. Could be 10 a.m., could be midday, could be early afternoon. So we can see now how these interlock, okay, but there's actually a variable in the time between infants and teenagers. Now, in adult life, this is really where the chronotypes and the balance starts to come into place. But typically, depending on where you are and what chronotype you are, you will go to bed at a reasonable time, maybe 10:30, 11 p.m. at night, and then rise at some point in the morning, maybe 6 a.m., 7, 8 a.m., depending on where you are. And then what you have is the older generations who actually need on par as much sleep as the younger generations. They just take it in a different way. Yet again, they may stay up later, or they may go to bed earlier, but they may be up a lot earlier and sleep periodically throughout the day as well. So across the 4 different stages of life, they're all different. So what this would mean was if we had to stay up and man the fire essentially, then there's always going to be someone up for a period of time. Now, there may be an hour or two where somebody's not up, but there will always be someone technically on watch. So this is the theory behind like why we sleep in the way that we do, and biologically we all have a different chronotype. So let's go into the chronotypes. And there are quizzes online where you can determine that, but for the most part, depending on like practical situation or your lifestyle, you will fall asleep and go to bed determined by like your work routine or family commitments or whatever that may be. And that could be out of alignment with actually your natural chronotype. So the first one's a night owl. So this night owl is somebody that is going to go to bed a little bit later. Okay, so it could be more 11, 12, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., that sort of time. Naturally, they're not really that tired, so they stay up later. And this isn't taking into consideration digital stimulation after dark, technology, because we can all get distracted and stay up as late as possible and conquer all the box sets in the world on Netflix, etc. But this is like natural. Imagine now, or take yourself back to a time when you've been camping or outside and it's dark. Like what do you naturally want to do? Do you like to stay up much past after dark? Or actually it could be dark in the evening, you sat around the campfire camping and it's 7 p.m. and you're like, I want to go to sleep, or it's 9 p.m. and you want to go to sleep. But typically for these people, they stay up later. Yeah, and they can be quite productive in the evening. But equally, what will happen with these type of people is they will want to lay in. Yeah, they're not productive in the morning, quite tired, and they want to lay in for longer periods of time. Now, switching over to the opposite of this, we've got the morning lark type, and these people would like to go to bed a little bit earlier, but equally they will rise earlier as well. So they might be up before the sun rises. Okay, so that's the complete opposite, which works well for many people. And also what you have is an intermediate, so an in-between version of this. So a little bit of night owl, a little bit of morning lark. Now, you probably know by now which one you'd prefer to be or would like to be. But then on top of that, there's the addition of actually what you can be or what you can do. And this is a big thing I see with people, is the fighting against their biology. Yeah, they're wanting to get up early and train, or they're wanting to go to bed earlier, but the fight in their biology. So if we align with our chronotype, we're actually setting ourselves up for more success, okay, for the most part. Like I said, external events will always dictate what really happens. And this kind of leads on to the next part of what we're talking about here. And that is like your environment and how you're really setting the scene, but then also like the consistency of sleep wake times. And when we're talking about this, what we're actually looking into is how much sleep we should be getting, yeah, what the sleep cycles are, and then how do I get quality sleep. So first things first with this, our sleep cycles are approximately 90 minutes. Okay, and we cycle through REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement, deep sleep, and light sleep. Okay, so these are the stages, and then there'll be areas of wakefulness, and I'll show you some of my sleep charts shortly. But really, these are the things that we cycle. So if we have a look at this, then what I want you to first look at is actually your sleep time. So what time you go to bed and actually fall asleep. If you track this, great, it'll be a little bit easier. And also what time you get up. So looking at this and looking at these sleep cycles, 90 minutes is an hour and a half. Yeah, 3 hours makes 2 blocks. 4.5 hours is 3 sleep cycles. 6 hours is 4 sleep cycles. So 4 complete sleep cycles would give you 6 hours of sleep. So that's the first one that you want to aim for, and that would allow you to get by. If time is short, like 6 hours is really the minimum you want to be shooting for. Add an additional sleep cycle on top of this, you're looking at 7.5 hours, so 7.5 hours of sleep. And this will allow you to perform. Okay, so this is the minimum really you should be shooting for, especially if you're an athlete, you're highly active, you want to be making sure that you're getting this. Yeah, that's an additional sleep cycle. Imagine now if you get 4 sleep cycles, which equates to 6 hours sleep per night, 7 days a week, versus getting 7.5 hours of sleep, you've got an additional 7 sleep cycles, which is significant. Okay, and then do that week in, week out, month in, month out. Yeah, year on year, that's going to be the most beneficial thing. Now, the peak, you're going to want like 9 hours and beyond. But yet again, we want to do this in sleep cycles. So we want to do this at 9 hours or 10.5 hours, so 10.5 hours. So that's what we want you to shoot for. So have a look at what time you're going to bed and falling asleep, and looking at what time you're getting up. And then have a look at how many sleep cycles am I getting? Am I getting 6 hours? Am I getting 7.5 hours? Am I getting 9 hours? Am I getting 10.5 hours? You want one of those. If you don't, then that could be problematic. If you're in between that, it's not so much of an issue on the odd occasion, but ask yourself how you feel. Because what can typically happen is if we break the sleep cycle at the wrong stage, we can end up being like groggy for many, many hours. And this actually happened to me Last summer, I was like looking after a dog. The dog started barking when I was taking an afternoon nap and woke me up right in the middle of my deep sleep cycle. Yeah, I had the nap to feel better, get some additional recovery in. But then what actually ended up happening is it felt like crap the whole rest of the day and I was pretty moody because I got woken up in the middle of my sleep cycle. Okay, so if we're constantly getting woken up or there's sleep disturbances or our alarm clock is going off right in the middle of a sleep cycle and we're not getting enough sleep on top of that because we're going to bed too late, as an example, then that's going to be a problem and that's going to affect the quality of the sleep. So let's have a look at quality of the sleep then. So what allows us to get quality sleep? The first thing is, like many other aspects of life, is consistency. So consistency. What do we mean by consistency? First thing is the bedtime. Are we going to bed and are we falling asleep at pretty much the same time each and every night? The answer is yes, great. The answer is no, that's the first thing you want to address. Second thing is the wake up time. So what time are we waking up each and every time, and then looking at actually the sleep cycles as well. So have a look at that now, like pause this podcast or just have some thought, or if you're on YouTube now and watching the presentation on this, just pause this and just write that down. Then that's going to give us the information that we need. Now with consistency, that will give us the duration. So that's the second part of quality sleep. First one being consistent. Second one is the duration, which we will have now, yeah, from your sleep wake times that you've just written down. And then off the back of that, if we get the consistency and the duration right, that will equate to the quality, because we're going to theoretically or hopefully wake up at the time that we want, allowing ourselves to get the sleep cycles that we want and need. Okay. So that's how we get quality of sleep. And that's what we first look at people that we work with as well. Are you getting enough consistency, getting up, go to bed at the same time? You're getting the duration that you need, and that equates to the quality. Okay, so next thing we're going to look at is sleep disturbances and things that will affect our sleep. And like I mentioned at the start of this, I've personally worked with people, my team have personally worked with people that have come to us and they've said to us, like, I have never been able to sleep more than 4 or 5 hours a night for the entirety of my life. For as long as I can remember, since childhood, I've never been able to sleep. Or they've got like disordered sleeping and stuff that's going on. Now, we spoke about evening routine, but I'd probably say the biggest one here is light and the use of light. Now, daylight is a big one, but then also the digital stimulation after dark is a big one as well. So what we're talking about here is blue light from lights, from lamps, from phones, from computers, televisions. All these things are going to disrupt our sleep because they're going to suppress melatonin or sleep hormones and send signals to the body to wake up. And that's why it's important in the early morning that we get light exposure to wake our body up. And this is actually one of the biggest ones, is the manipulation of light and how we use it. Now, in the winter months or the darker months, the shorter days, it's not that easy. And I definitely find that I'm affected seasonally by the shorter days and darkness. It takes me a lot to get up. There's various things that I can do to do that, to improve that situation. But first and foremost, like digital stimulation after dark, minimizing that. Something we suggest is, well, digital usage is minimized in the evening. If you're using it, you're using blue light blockers or filters, or a combination of both. Filters typically aren't good enough. And that will allow us to block the blue light being absorbed through our eyes, as well as like areas of our skin can be covered up, or sitting in darker rooms, candlelight, using red lights, all beneficial for minimizing that stimulation from artificial light after dark, which will cause sleep disturbances. Okay, and also looking at like the sleeping environment as well. This is a big one. I mean, look in this picture here. This lady's got some sort of a clock or light on. Like even that will be causing sleep disturbances, even if you've done it for many years. Like even the glow of this this watch LED light on the back of my wrist has been shown in studies that have been done to people that will cause sleep disturbances. And this is the second thing that we look at, is like the environment. Like, what is in the environment? And yet again, looking at light, do you have a smoke alarm, or do you have a light or an alarm clock with some form of light being emitted in any way, shape, or form? If so, remove it. See how that has a beneficial effect. I used to have like alarms on my roof. I would cover them with tape, even the smallest little LED, because they will cause sleep disturbances. And then also, if you are in more of a built-up area, or an area that's got street lamps outside and your curtains aren't good enough and not fully blocking that out, yet again, that's going to have an effect. Okay, that blue light will have an effect. Okay, so have a look at the environment and what's going on in the environment, and minimize the light in the evening. And in the morning, you want to do the complete opposite. You want to flush yourself with light. You want to get as much light as possible. Sunlight, ideally, but if not, you can get like light lamps that can assist, giving you lots of light to help you wake up as well. Also looking at like the temperature of the room. Okay, is it well ventilated? Is there air? Yeah, are you sleeping with the right amount of warmth? Have you got a little amount of clothing or no clothing on to help you sleep and breathe? Yeah, so you're not waking up due to the temperature being out of whack. Yeah, other noises in the environment, the household, like whether it's white noise or noise outside, how can you minimize that? Yeah, there's a whole host of things. Other things that can cause sleep disturbances as well is training too close to bedtime, in particular intense training. Yeah, anywhere from like 2 to 4 hours, that can stimulate you and prevent you from sleeping. It's a stress. And the same with eating as well. Like, eating late doesn't make you fat. Like, if that's a belief system that you actually have, actually is going to disturb your sleep if you've eaten too close to bedtime. And I know for most people it's not always workable, especially if you're finishing work late and then train afterwards, and then you have to eat. Okay, start having a look at the routine, and putting everything in the best possible position, because if you're eating too close to bedtime, then your body's going to be in a state of digestion and not in a restful state, and you're actually going to digest and get the benefits of the food, but also it will disturb your sleep, which will have an effect on the quality of the sleep, and also it will affect your ability to digest, and it'll just be problematic. Basically, it will keep you up and it will dysregulate your appetite for the start of the day. Okay, so there's tons and tons and tons of things. Anxiety is another thing that can affect sleep, like stress, anxiety, having things on our mind. So a big part of what we do is actually help people become more organized. Yeah, planning the day, prioritizing what needs to be done, like scheduling that in with a time, a date, a location. So you're not laying awake at night thinking about all the things that you need to do and feeling disorganized and not very well prepared. Actually being prepared and knowing what you're doing. Little things that could be useful with a calendar, could be a journal, having that next to your bed. So if your mind is racing, then you can write these things down. You don't necessarily need to do anything, but you've organized your life in a better way. Big one we see is like race anxiety, a race, something, or some big occasion that you care about, that being on our mind. But yet again, like, the more prepared we are, the more we alleviate the stress and the anxiety that comes with that. And a big thing as well, and I mentioned this a few times recently, is we create anxiety by telling ourselves, okay, I must get to sleep, I need to get to sleep. But in actual fact, that has the opposite effect, because then we're self-inducing pressure to sleep. So do the complete opposite, like lay there and don't try and sleep, because you're putting the stress on yourself to sleep. Meditate, focus on your breath work, read a book, okay, do something that's not focusing on the thing that you want to be doing. I know that seems really backwards, but often the harder we try, the harder we fall, okay, and the harder we try to fall asleep, we put more pressure on ourselves, especially if there's a deadline. So do the complete opposite. Yeah, set conditions, up for success, okay, and ease out of the day. Okay, be prepared for the following day, and that will just help you get everything in the best possible position. Guys, there's tons more that I can really talk about on this. Like sleep is not a topic that you just discuss in a 30, 45-minute hour podcast. It's so vast and so specific to you. So although there's some specific information and some really useful stuff here, it's still general information. Like I said, I will dive into this and do dive into this with my team and the people that we work with, and equally how we make this more specific for you as an individual and beneficial is actually by questions. So we can give you answers on what you need in regards to that. But let's look at the complete opposite and why we should actually get good quality sleep. So what are the benefits? Okay, so hormone optimization, so balancing your hormones, in particular like sex hormones, so improving your libido, your sex drive, boosting metabolism for fat loss, muscle gain, increases energy and therefore productivity, brain function, it's physically restorative, it's mentally restorative, it's going to regulate your appetite, which again will help with like mood, energy, and body composition. And like I mentioned at the start, sleep is the #1 priority. This is not in order. Everything else will fall apart. Like just think about if you skip a meal, you'd be pretty groggy. You miss a training session, you might feel bad. But this could go on for days and days and days, months and months and months, years and years. And then the cracks will start to form and ultimately lead to something that's really problematic. It's been shown that even if we have one night of lousy sleep, it significantly impairs us and affects us in a negative way. So sleep is the foundational thing we must do and get right as human beings in order to be productive and just operate efficiently and have a beneficial life. And equally on top of that, if we're not sleeping correctly, it's been shown that by cutting your sleep in half, you are cutting your life expectancy significantly. So don't be part of that 4 a.m., 5 a.m. club that's like wearing it, getting up early and going to bed and getting by on 4 or 5 hours sleep as a badge of honor. Like you wear that for a very short amount of time and you probably take it to your grave a lot earlier. So like if you cut your sleep, you're cutting your life. So get good quality sleep. It is vitally important for us for normal daily function. But in particular, if you class yourself as an athlete, then you need to get on top of this so that you can recover and you can ultimately perform. Okay. And this is typically a big obstacle for many of us. And yet again, that comes down to our evening routine. If we can optimize our evening, then that's going to be the thing that sets us up for a good quality night of sleep and therefore a good morning routine, a good training session in the early part of the day, if that's when you choose to do it, good meal choices, good choices across the day, better relationships, better libido. The list goes on and on and on. We rinse and repeat. So this is something that must not be sacrificed. Like you want to sleep like it's your job for the rest of your life. And I know it might be quite frightening to go, whoa, actually I'm only here for a certain amount of days, years, whatever. And by sleeping more, I'm actually losing out. No, actually you're not. You're nourishing your body in the best possible way. Okay, like I said, there's going to be lots of questions that are drawn out from this, and that's completely fine. But what I want you to do is ask those questions and comments. Okay, I really want you to do that and sit and ponder on this. But going into the sleep cycles, and I'll show you a recent report and actually some other statistics, if I can dig them out from the past couple of weeks while I've actually traveled, because this is an additional thing like time zone shifting, especially if you're racing, traveling abroad, whatever it may be, especially if you're changing time zones and how that affects you across time. So let's have a look at sleep and the stages here. So here's an example of my sleep from last night. So I ended up getting like nine hours worth of sleep, just over. But here's the really interesting thing with sleep. So say for instance you go to bed at, or think you go to bed at 10 p.m. and you wake up at 6 a.m. just as an example. We think in our head that we have got a full 8 hours worth of sleep, which makes sense. Well, I fell asleep here and I woke up at this time. You do the math, that's 8 hours. But the reality of the situation is, and from what I've found personally in myself and monitoring other people's sleep over the past few years, is that we can typically lose anywhere from like 20 minutes to an hour, and that's pretty normal. So as you can see on this chart here, actually last night I was asleep for, was in bed for like 10 hours, but actually I lost 54 minutes. So time in bed, 10 hours and 5 minutes, and awake for 54 minutes. There's various sleep disturbances across the night, some short, some only like a matter of seconds to minutes. But an early part of that was in the early part of the night as well. Okay, so that's the first consideration. So you could lose up to an hour. So take that in consideration, especially going into the sleep cycles, how much sleep you think you're getting. You aim off for about an hour more. Okay, so if you wanted to shoot for 7.5 hours, then going to bed at like 9:30, 10 o'clock would be the best thing if you're getting up at 6 a.m. or vice versa. Second really interesting thing is deep sleep. And this is why it's important to align with your chronotype and get to bed at the best and earliest opportunity you can. So with deep sleep, if we don't go to bed at the time our body needs us to, we actually lose out on deep sleep. So as you can see here on this chart, working from left to right, in the early part of the evening, I get the most amount of my deep sleep. So say, for instance, I went to bed at midnight, I would have lost out on probably about an hour's worth of deep sleep. So it would have slashed my deep sleep in half. And deep sleep is physically restorative. So this is where I'm actually getting a good amount of physical recovery. So if I went to bed an hour later, I lose that. I don't regain that in another part of the night, because as you can see on the chart, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and more sparse and further and few between. So noticing this, knowing what your chronotype is, and going to bed at the same consistent time each and every night within 30 minutes is really, really beneficial. Okay, I'm not saying this is the perfect night of sleep. I actually went to bed later than I normally do because I was up watching stuff. So it doesn't need to be perfect. However, it did have an impact on recovery. Didn't really have a physically active day. And you got 60% of the recovery that I needed despite having 9 hours of sleep. So sleep, yes, it's a big component, but actually it's only one of the many factors that help us recover and ultimately perform. We'll go into some other sleep from the past couple of weeks. One since I've been home, and then the other one we will look at when I was away. So this is the past week here. So like I said earlier about getting by, performing and peaking. So I'm managing to achieve, for the most part, 90+% of my sleep need 50% of the time. The other part is around about sort of 80-85% of what I need, which allows me to perform. Okay, so this is since I've been home and re-establishing and getting back into routines. However, the weeks before this, while I was actually in Dubai, looked very different. And as you can see on the chart, it's starting to dip down. Yeah, so let's just go back a few more days. Okay, so it's now dropping into the low zone. We'll go back a couple more days just so we've got a full week's worth, and you can see what impact that actually has on recovery scores as well. So really I was dropping into like get by and low, so 50% of the time, around about 60-70%, the rest of it down to about 50% of the need that I actually needed. So not ideal. I did have some flights and some travel days and whatever else in there. But when I look at this actually had like a really detrimental effect on my recovery. Yeah, and actually my output. And I think on a couple of those occasions, I actually slept in the afternoon as well to compensate for this. It's like 20 to 90 minutes on a couple of occasions. And that's a whole nother topic, talking about like the biphasic sleep and napping. But really what I want to highlight to you is like the importance of sleep. And like I said, like I'm missing out on numerous sleep cycles there, which isn't too much of an issue per night. But if that accumulates for weeks and weeks on end, we're missing out on a significant amount of sleep, which is detrimental to our health, but ultimately our performance at the same time as well. So really interesting how this really works. But if we head back over to looking at the other sleep stages as well, what we will see is light sleep, and that's about it really, I think, and dream sleep as well, so your REM sleep. Just head back over there. I think it's a little bit more useful on the app as well, where you have a look at recovery and time that I've actually spent asleep as well. But here we are, looking at another day where I got quite a good sleep, and then actually a good recovery score based on that. Actually spent a little bit longer awake than I normally do. But the next important component is light sleep. So actually light sleep is comprised of like the second biggest part of sleep, and this is like mentally restorative, as well as physically restorative. So we want to make sure we're getting plenty of light sleep, and the same for REM. REM is rapid eye movement, and this is known as your dream sleep as well. So really, really important to get each of these for mental and physical benefits, but also it's great for consolidation of thoughts, memory, your ability to learn and retain information. Actually, there was a guy that I worked with that was actually doing special forces selection, was actually successful in what he was doing. And one of the things we worked on was like how to retain information in the most effective way. And we discussed napping and actually used napping very, very effectively to help with the consolidation of learning some pretty complex stuff, among other things. So yeah, really, really good. Don't see napping as lazy, but see it as problematic if actually you're not getting enough sleep at night. It's a good way for a quick brain reboot in the middle of the day, but it shouldn't be something that's continuously done to compensate for poor and lousy sleep. Cool. Like I said, there's tons and tons more I can share on this, but I don't want to kick it to death. But I hope you've taken some value. I hope you've taken some benefit from this, and look forward to more information on this when we revisit this topic, maybe in the near future. Maybe it'll be some time, but it just depends on the feedback I get from this. So open to questions and comments on this, and yeah, look forward to the next few episodes. We're going to be doing some on fasting. I know some of you guys are interested in a bit more on fasting and nutrition, which is yet again another big obstacle, and that's closely related to sleep. Actually, if we're not sleeping correctly, then that's going to have a massive impact on our appetite and how irregular that is. So we'll talk about that, and we'll debunk some of the myths and give you some really useful information. Appreciate your time, guys. If there's any other subjects or topics that you want, then just give me a shout. I'm open to ideas. I've got plenty of ideas and plenty of content that I can do on this. But I appreciate you listening and taking your time. I hope you took some value, and look forward to seeing you again. Cheers.